Lilith is widely known today as a dramatic figure, Adam's first wife, a woman who refused submission, fled Eden, and became a demon. This story is repeated often, but when we examine the earliest surviving sources, it does not appear. In the Hebrew Bible, Lilith is mentioned only once, in Isaiah 34 verse 14. The verse describes a ruined land, abandoned and desolate, where wild animals and strange beings gather after destruction. Lilith appears in a list alongside creatures of the wilderness and the night. There is no narrative, no dialogue, and no explanation of who or what she is. The passage itself is poetic and symbolic. Isaiah is not telling a story, but painting a picture of total collapse, a place so forsaken that only creatures associated with chaos and danger remain. In this context, Lilith functions as part of the imagery of desolation, not as an individual character with a backstory. Importantly, the text does not describe Lilith as human, female in a social sense, or connected to Adam, Eve, or the Garden of Eden. There is no rebellion, no marriage, and no moral lesson attached to her name in the biblical text. Most biblical scholars understand this verse as drawing on imagery already familiar to its ancient audience. The word Lilith would have evoked associations with the night, with unseen dangers, and with forces beyond human control, not a specific mythological figure. At this earliest stage, Lilith is best understood as a symbolic presence, part of a broader ancient worldview in which the night was inhabited by threatening and unpredictable forces. To understand why this single word carried such meaning, we must look earlier still, to the cultures of Mesopotamia that shaped the language and imagery of the biblical world. To understand the word Lilith in Isaiah, we must look beyond the Bible to the ancient cultures of Mesopotamia. Long before the Hebrew scriptures were written, Akkadian and Sumerian texts described classes of beings associated with the night, wind, illness, and danger during sleep. These beings were referred to using terms such as lilû, lilītu, and ardat-lilî. They were not individual characters with personal stories, but categories of spirits. Some were believed to wander at night, some to afflict people during dreams, and others to threaten childbirth or sexual order. Their danger came from invisibility and unpredictability, not from rebellion or moral failure. When Hebrew developed in contact with these cultures, it absorbed both vocabulary and imagery. Most scholars agree that the Hebrew Lilith is a linguistic descendant of these Mesopotamian terms. By the time Isaiah was written, the word would have carried associations with night-dwelling forces already familiar to the audience. This helps explain why the biblical text offers no clarification. The author assumes recognition. Lilith does not need introduction because she functions as a symbol, a name that evokes fear, disorder, and abandonment. At this stage, Lilith is neither queen nor temptress. She is not uniquely Jewish, nor uniquely female in a narrative sense. She represents a shared ancient Near Eastern understanding of the dangers of the night. Only later will this symbolic figure begin to change. After the biblical period, Jewish writings continue to develop through interpretation, liturgy, and folklore. This is where the name Lilith begins to appear more clearly in connection with harmful spirits, but still without the modern Adam's first wife storyline. A key early witness comes from the Dead Sea Scrolls. In a protective hymn often called the Songs of the Sage, or Songs of the MacLeod, the speaker describes reciting words meant to terrify a range of destructive beings. In that list, Lilith appears alongside demons and other threatening spirits. Here, she functions as one supernatural danger among many, not a character with biography, motives, or a role in Genesis. This matters because it shows two things at once. The name Lilith was already being used in Jewish tradition by the late Second Temple period, and the usage is practical and protective, aimed at warding off harm. But even in this setting, there is still no mention of Adam, Eden, or a first woman created before Eve. Over later centuries, especially in late antique and medieval material, Lilith gathers more traits: a night demon profile, links to sleep and vulnerability, and fears connected to childbirth and infants. Protective practices like written formulas and amulets become part of how people imagined resisting her. The famous story of Lilith as Adam's first wife appears much later, most clearly in the medieval alphabet of Ben Sira, which presents it as a folkloric explanation rather than scripture. So the trajectory is gradual, from a rare biblical term, to a named spirit in protective texts, to a fuller character in medieval storytelling.